So there you have it all. Now, the Checkout Conference 2014 is taking place today at the Four Seasons Hotel, and I'm joined by the editor of Checkout magazine, Stephen Wynne-Jones. Stephen, welcome to the programme.
Good evening, George.
Now, the title, I have to look it up, it's Aftershocks, the Retail Brand Challenge.
That's right.
Aftershocks from what?
Well, I suppose it's a bit of a play on words. We're after the worst of the shock. We're after the worst of the economic crash, but we're still experiencing aftershocks. We're still experiencing tremors in the marketplace in terms of consumer sentiment, in terms of things like the local authority charges and things like this. There's a lot of, I suppose, what Donald Rumsfeld would call known unknowns out there that we know are coming down the line, that's stifling consumer sentiment from rising, really.
But the whole thing about, and because you're Checkout magazine, you're presumably food and...
Exactly, retail and food.
As opposed to like fridges and things, is that right?
Exactly.
Yeah, as opposed to white goods. We're talking about food and so on. Everybody buys food. The only difference is that it is a lower percentage of a rich man's income and it's a higher percentage of a poor man's income. Understandably, it's about roughly can only buy one loaf of bread or one head of cabbage or whatever. So, is it true that there has been a shift in where people are going to do their shopping?
There certainly has. I mean, one of the things that's really permeated the mindset of the shopper is value. I mean, obviously, on the back of the economic downturn, there's been a real drive for value that's led to people increasingly shopping in Aldi and Lidl. But what we've found recently in the past few months is that while there are signs that people are going back to doing one big shop a week, which was a trend that was common when the good times were rolling, they're doing that one big shop increasingly in Aldi and Lidl, that Aldi and Lidl have almost got to the same stature of some of the more established grocers.
Now, I have never been inside the door of an Aldi or Lidl store. My picture of it is that it's like the old cash and carry, that you kind of bought a carton of 12 bottles of mayonnaise as opposed to one. So if I go into Aldi and Lidl, it's going to look like Tesco and SuperValu, is it?
I think that what Aldi and Lidl have done very successfully is they've maintained a model that's not dissimilar to what they do in Germany, in that there are no bells and whistles really in terms of the in-store layout. But the marketing they've done around that has been very clever. They came into the country about 14 years ago, with a very value-first message. You know, it was cheap, there it was, laid out on the floor on pallets. Recently, they've really upped the quality angle of it. They've promoted the fact that they've got links with Irish suppliers, the provenance of all the food. I don't know if you got the Lidl or Aldi brochures in the post over Christmas, but there's a lot of, very highfalutin food there you might see in a much more salubrious retailer.
Now, you said that what the shopper was looking at was value. But there's a difference between value and price. Like, I just happened to mention mayonnaise, for instance. There's still Helleman's mayonnaise in my house because the lovely Ingrid buys Helleman's mayonnaise. But she could have bought another mayonnaise which was a lot cheaper, I guess. But she's sold on the idea that Mr. Helleman made it personally or whatever.
One of the difficulties, I think, for brands at the moment, and also for retailers, is that you have to have the quality there, because people have come to expect really good quality from products, from Hellmann's, from Coca-Cola, from any of the big brands essentially. But at the same time, you need to have the price right. I mean, you've seen in the past few years the rise of private label products, own brand products, store brands. And that's kind of shaken up the marketplace a lot. So a lot of the big brand guys, and one of the things that was being discussed at the conference really today was, where do the brand guys go? Do they go on a value footing? Do they try to up the quality level? And it's a very difficult quandary they find themselves
But,
in.
When you shop, and in recent years have become a convert to pushing the trolley for the shop, you go to certain chains for certain, and they won't have what other chains have. Like, I have this crunchy thing, which I really like as a cereal. Now, I can only get that in SuperValu. I can't get it anywhere else.
Is that where you shop, George, is SuperValu?
Yeah, because it's a couple of 100 metres from my front door.
And there was...
But Aldi or Lidl, I'm not sure which, is 20 paces closer to my house, but I've never gone through the door.
Well, what there was up until a few months ago, I mentioned there that people are going back to the one big shop a week. People were shopping around. I mean, it was the trend that really came in the past couple of years, driven by the search for value.
That you bought Coca-Cola in place A and you bought mayonnaise at point 2.
Yeah, exactly. But driven, I suppose, by a few things. There was a real drive towards vouchering towards the end of last year. There was Dunn's released, if you spend 50 quid, you got a tenner off. Same in Super Value. Aldi and Lidl went down that road again. And now people are going to do the one big shop again. So they're not shopping around as much.
I mean, were people not questioning? Like, say, take it to an extreme. You know, you went to 5 supermarkets, so you got the cheapest stuff possible. Your weekly shop now is going to take you a day. I mean, the whole point about a weekly shop, when I go through the door of Super Value in Dean's Grange, my plan is to get out of it in the shortest possible time. That's why I always welcome Boy Scouts or whatever who are standing at the checkout to load it up for me.
But you know, Super Value in Dean's Grange obviously has a little directly opposite it.
Yeah.
Directly opposite.
Directly. I've never been inside it.
And it's one of the interesting things, I suppose, about that shopping around trend is that when that Lidl opened up, rather than cut off some of the Super Value shoppers, it brought more people to the area. It was almost like when you open a restaurant. You open restaurants where the other restaurants are. The people were shopping around. They were going to one store and then the other.
Conor Pope, who's the price watch editor of the Irish Times. I mean, if Conor ever comes in to me and he starts talking about saving money, particularly on food items, he'll say, you know, in Aldi, they've got Aldi coffee, you know, but like, I come from a different generation, I suppose. I mean, I come from a generation that saw the first self-service shops. Like Fergal Quinn and I, he opened a shop and I went to it. Like, before that, there wasn't self-service. And before that, they parcelled up your groceries, and you had to be really good at tying a knot with twine, like. And they added it up in pencil on the bag, on the brown paper bag. Like, that was the way you shopped. And then it'll never work came in, self-service, you know.
Well, that's exactly the point, because when it came in self-service, people said it would never work. People said it would never catch on. Same with scanning, you know, scanning on the tills, barcodes.
I'm a scanner. I'm a brilliant scanner.
But barcodes on the tills, even the self-checkout now you have in some stores where you check out the products yourself. All of these kind of trends that came along and just become part of the routine. And in that case, you know, the likes of Aldi, Lidl coming into the market, and you know, now they've become part of the routine like everybody else.
But go back to where I started, right? Rich or poor, you have to buy food. The only difference is what percentage is it of your income, yes? Did people buy less food during the bad times?
I don't think so. This is going back to my point about shopping around more often. I mean, one of the challenges for retailers at the moment is really to define a point of difference, because everybody's going after the value ticket. Everyone's trying to get people in. So everyone's bringing out new and exciting own brand ranges to compete with the own brand ranges of their competitors. There's a lot of the same play being made by a lot of the big retailers, and there needs to be a bit more differentiation. You know, there are times when a lot of the products you'd buy in Aldi, Super Value, Tesco, you know, there's a lack of differentiation there, and there needs to be more.
The thing, interestingly, I miss in Super Value in Dean's Grange, as opposed to Super Queen, which is the Super Value now, of course, in Blackrock, was the idea to scan the products yourself. So I used to play this game. What was the minimum number of bags that I could use for the shop? So you had to pack them very carefully, you know. Whereas it's a pain in the butt for me on my own. Well, Ingrid's putting it on the travelator, and I'm then I'm putting it in. I got all this stuff coming down the hill, and I got to put it in bags. It's a mess. Whereas the self-scanning enabled you to do it in the most productive way.
Yeah, and it is part and parcel of I suppose, modern retail. I mean, one of the things that's increasing in popularity is online. I mean, it's taking a while to get there, but Tesco obviously have an online presence. SuperValu have a growing online presence. And, other countries have shown the way in terms of online shopping, going on the computer, ordering your products, and then they get delivered to your house. Ireland's a bit slow to kind of grasp that concept, but it is growing. So that could be the next evolution of the self-scanning. George, you and Ingrid could be on the laptop at home. And
what about Paul in Tralee says the big thing about Aldi and Lidl is no piped music. Do you think that is a deliberate decision? I'm sure it is, but I mean, is there a psychology behind it, do you think?
I think one of the bigger things about Aldi and Lidl is the fact that you've a caller from Tralee texting in, so there's clearly Aldi and Lidl have a presence in Tralee. One of the things that they've been very good at is getting geographical spread. I mean, they've got critical mass now around the country, which obviously is converting shoppers. People are going to go through the doors and try it. And whether the music in the store is a differentiating factor or not, I can't answer that one, unfortunately.
Well, Jen says the Germans have always shopped in Lidl and Aldi. Obviously, they're German stores, whereas we're a bit more snobbish about it.
Well, I mean,
Is it really a class issue, as Joe suggests?
I doubt that anymore, to be honest. I mean, when I say that most of the supermarkets, I mean, they're going after the value message very strongly. I mean, even Super Quinn, which, obviously, historically positioned itself above, what was going on underneath it. But even it, it's in its latter weeks now, but even it has to go down the road of offering, packet of cornflakes for €1, the steak and wine sale, the fish and wine sale, a constant kind of value message in there.
I have to defend myself against allegations of snobbery. I mean, when Lidl and Aldi opened, and you're saying they've changed in the meantime, I didn't want, like when you're older, it is a fact that older and younger people shop differently, because bending, or if you're 5'2" like Ingrid, reaching the top shelf is different. There is, and I think stores, and this is what Fergal Quinn, because he was such a great marketeer, he also understood that older people had different requirements. And I always imagined, and I'm probably wrong, but, they came in with this idea to stuff on pallets. Was that not true? And that the whole idea of shelving and all that wasn't part of their way of doing business.
No, and to a certain extent, if you walk into an Aldi or Lidl now, it's not that dissimilar in terms of the way the products and the stores are laid out. But the message behind it, George, has changed. Like, this is what I'm saying. That, there was an Aldi ad that came out, Love Ireland Like Aldi was the tagline. It didn't mention products, it didn't mention price. It was interviews with farmers, and then the Aldi message at the end. They're moving away from just the focus on value to something akin to what some of the mainstream grocers, your Dunnes or Tesco, would have done historically, or SuperValu.
Yeah, Darren in Cork says, George, more money than sense, but that wouldn't be difficult. Self-service and scan through jobs do someone out of a job, says Stu in Cork. Well, that may well be true, but there's always changes in things. And Martin says, mayonnaise is packed with fat and is the ketchup of the social climber like yourself. God, a simple thing like go to the grocery shop and I'm getting dog's abuse. But I have news on galoshes. They're available at most ex-army surplus stores. Middleton has one. Phil in Mitchelstown said somebody else bought them at the leather shop just off Ann Street in Dublin, next to the Chili Club. John Rathcoon, he bought galoshes yesterday. C&D Shoes in Charlemont Street. Yeah, C&D shoes. Well, sure, listen, you have no excuse at all for getting, Patrick, for getting a pair of galoshes. You get them anywhere. Stephen Wynne-Jones, editor of Checkout, was my guest. We'll kickstart the business.